All right. Well, happy day to you. And I am going to give you another video that drills down a little bit on a topic that some people struggle with. And that topic today will be independent variables. In undergrad, you use this term quite a bit, but may never have fully understood it. And that is often the case as you go through your studies. So a question that has come up recently is the difference between independent variables and levels. And so I'm going to spend a little time doing that and give you a couple of examples here. All right. So a practical skill for you to have is to be able to identify and label all of the variables in an article or in a research study. So there's several different types of variables, and we'll perhaps get to more of them in future videos. But for now, let's just talk about independent variables. We'll definitely address dependent variables in another video. These are a package. But let's start with independent variables. So in an experiment, the independent variable is the variable that gets manipulated by the researcher. Okay, it's the focus of the experiment. So what does that actually mean? What does variable manipulation mean? So basically, it means that the researcher is comparing a treatment or an experimental condition to at least one other condition. So this idea of comparison is a key feature in experiments. In order to provide scientific evidence as opposed to opinion or reasoning, you need to compare conditions. So let's use an example from our daily lives where we use comparison, and this is not unlike what happens in experimenter manipulated situations. All right, so here you are. It's Saturday morning, and you're sitting down with some very nice coffee and really excited to watch your favorite YouTube influencer. Probably not a stats video. And, as you start to do this, the dreaded error message comes up that says the internet cannot be found. Right? Where did it go? So you wonder to yourself, what is the cause of this? You're not interested in the correlations, right? But you're interested in the cause because you want to solve the problem. So you run through a series of diagnostics. You check your computer, maybe turning it on or off. You check the router. You restart your internet. What you're doing here is engaging in a series of comparisons to diagnose your problem. So another way to say this is that you are engaging in a series of comparisons by cycling through conditions. You're cycling through these options to provide causal evidence. And so, hopefully you get your internet working. But if not, you're going to try a number of tactics that will help you diagnose this problem. All right. So what you're doing here is you're manipulating the conditions that come to mind for you as you solve to seek your technical problem. So you're manipulating the independent variable, in this case, the cause of your technical problem. So, it's not a perfect example, but it gives you an idea that what you're doing is going back and forth in order to provide evidence. So you are systematically eliminating options, and research often does that. All right, so an independent variable is the conditions that the researcher manipulates in order to test the way that the independent variable operates outside of the lab. So what do we call these conditions that the researcher manipulates? Well, there's always going to be more than one. These conditions are sometimes called conditions, or they're sometimes called groups, and often they're called levels. As you know, that's the problem with stats. Sometimes they have multiple options for labeling. So this is a level. So in clinical psychology experiments, these conditions will always involve groups of people being assigned to one of at least two groups. Okay? One of at least two groups. So, like each of these conditions is considered a level of the independent variable. So you're never going to have more independent variables than levels. Levels are usually characterized, as you read in the study, as a particular group that participants get assigned to. And if you have one independent variable and two groups, you're going to have the option of assigning people to two groups. And those are levels. Now, when you're reading articles, to determine whether or not they're independent variables or levels, sometimes it's helpful to look at the language used. And so if they're using conditions or if they're using groups, you're usually looking at levels. Independent variables are broader. They will encompass both of the levels, or all three of the levels, or however many levels you have. They're going to encompass those. And they will be an umbrella concept over them and more abstract. So, for example, if you're dealing with trying to determine what treatment is best, the specifics of the treatments will be the levels. So the type of treatment, as opposed to a broader concept of treatment in general. All right, those are also called factors. So independent variables are also called factors. So let's look through a couple of these examples and see if we can drill down a little bit. All right, so let's talk about this first one here. Gender was the focus of interest in this study, and participants were assigned to two groups or levels. So in this particular situation, gender was the independent variable and male-female was the levels. So if the experimenter chose not to use a binary classification for gender and then maybe add 3 or 4 options, there's still levels. And gender will be the independent variable, and then the various categories of gender will be the levels. Okay. So in another one. So researchers wanted to know whether drinking kombucha made participants feel more positive during the day. Again, we're not focusing on dependent variable at this point, just independent variable. So in this case, what you have here is the consumption of kombucha, yes or no. Those are two conditions, and those are the levels. Okay. And then let's do this last one here, just to tie it up. And in this case, experimenters wanted to find out which is the best treatment for social phobia. Participants with social phobia were assigned to one of 3 groups: a behavioral therapy group, a cognitive therapy group, and then a group therapy condition. Okay, so pause the video and identify the independent variable here and then the levels. Okay, now that you've hopefully done that, that you're engaging in active learning. You hopefully correctly identified treatment as the independent variable, and then the three levels as behavior therapy, cognitive therapy, and group therapy. Your three conditions. And you're comparing those three conditions to each other to see which is superior. And so the focus of the question will then revolve around how the independent variable is designed. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful to you as a start. We will, I will produce a couple more videos to talk about, so you can practice examples on both independent and dependent variables. So let me get to making a dependent variable lecture for you, and we'll talk soon.